Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 178 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to continue to work on the bus and add new resources to it. Specifically, the small electric motors, multi-cylinder engines, and big electric motors, and then we'll go from there. And as a side note, I just finished building my computer, so this is the first episode being recorded on it, so hopefully it is a little better quality and a little smoother, but also because I use OBS, it might not make a difference, so we shall see. Looks like we're getting some silver coil warnings. That's to be expected. The factory's slowly working through the deficit here. It'll eventually catch up, and yeah, we really do need to upgrade silver production, but since we're not really using the silver for anything right now, these are kind of harmless warnings, so we'll just let them take their course. Okay. So we need to work on the small electric motors. Instead of making 15, I actually made more like 30 of the single cylinder engines. It doesn't really matter, it's just we might be gear limited if it's maxed out, but it doesn't really matter. So we can build this one close to 30 as well, just so it's similar in size. But looking at the design, it looks like the limiting factor is copper coils, because these numbers aren't really friendly as far as direct insertion goes. So we're probably going to have to base it around the size of the copper coils here. So let's set that to 0 and compute by factory and see what we can get here. So it looks like 3 of those assemblers will max out on copper cables. So then we'll need 2 chopping up the iron coils, and then 14 making the motors. We'll start just plopping stuff in the middle here, and it looks like we need to get this out of the way. Might as well take out some more trees while they're idle. Is that far enough away to work on it? Yeah. Okay. See, we only need the 2 machines making the iron plates, and then we need 3 of the electronic ones. Maybe we can squish these in a little bit. And it looks like they fit. And then the plate input can come in there. Let's do the copper output right there, but I guess it needs to be red. And then the plate output can go on this belt, but we also need some gears, which can come up through there. And then we need several groups of machines making the motors here, so belts go in, belts go in, and the output can go up there. And then the long-handed for the other components. We can't put them in the middle because of wire spacing. So if that is 6 right there, we'll need 12. And look at that. Look how fast the nanobots are now. I approve. Of course, it's going to go through nanobot ammo really fast, but it's a give and take. Let's just have a power line in there so there's no flashing. And then the copper output is going to be a little tricky, because that's a lot of resources. Looks like it basically has to be stack inserters. So let's do regular stack, near stack, and then 1 of each right there to max out that belt. And that's the basic size of it. And then we can copy it to the other side. And we could probably share these belts in the middle if we move the inserters around. That's so fast. Then we gotta get this over here, but It doesn't let you flip it, so we've got to be a little careful with it here. Then if we put these right here, they should still be able to reach everything we need. Let's not make this mistake from before and make too many of them, so let's check. That is 26 per second, but we haven't put the modules in yet, which is very much going to slow all this down. Now let's check it. Okay, 12.6. So it makes sense to make 2 of these. And if we're going to double it over, we can kind of combine the belts again. We can't combine the red one, because that's the copper cables, but we can combine this yellow one here, which will have plates and gears on it. So we'll pick it up, plop it over. I probably should start using bots for this. How are they doing with power? It's getting a little low. Really need to get some of those blocks, those wooden blocks. I keep forgetting. They even have spaces for them. So the copper output goes onto their own belt, but these 2 machines on each side share the center one, and it should work. Well, it looks like we'll need to make it a red belt, because we'll need 5 plates and 5 gears a second. So if we double it up, we'll need 20. Thus, this needs to be red, at least when it's doubled like that. This side that's not doubled doesn't need to be. And now, I saved the gears for last because we've got a bit of a problem here. Not really a problem, just an inconvenience. That we have this split and have the gears going back here because this is the first point to which all of the gears are available based on this machine's location here, so we have to output down this way. So if we tried to put it here and push it this way, it would be a little awkward, so instead we want to do it from this direction. Let's see what we can do. It's a little weirdly placed here. Let's just change it a little bit, just to make it look a little cleaner. Then put the power poles on the ends, which is how I typically build these other things. So let's just do it for consistency. And I think that's good. Let's double, triple check. The amount is good. And then we kind of line it up the best we can with the other things. And one nice thing about having those power poles is that it kind of shows me the alignment, because the machines aren't going to be completely aligned. So if I try to align machines like this, it would be off-center. So we want to align it by the power poles and give it, let's say, 2 spaces in case some belts need to go through there. And that ought to work. And there's the output right there. The bot should be pretty good. Yeah, it looks like they got everything done. We should have most things ready to hook up. First, let's make sure that these gears are going to the right places. Trying to save input belts going across the bus here, so just using this one to cover the whole setup. Let's see, these need to be inverted. Let's hook it up. See what happens. Looks pretty good. All the resources are making it to the bottom here. However, these guys aren't getting their amount. Ah, that because it requires 10. Oh yeah, I believe I needed to update these. There we go. That's a lot of motors. And a slight optimization we can do is put this here. Say we want iron to go onto the side here. Actually, probably take this thing, put it right there instead. There we go. Doesn't really matter that much in the scheme of things, but if you're OCD about having some resources that can't be accessed by the machines that want them, then that's a tiny optimization. Now we've got another output. Now that that's taken care of, we can go to engines. And yes, I think we decided with engines, 1 per second is enough, because they don't go into that many things. Let's be doubly sure here. So it definitely goes into vehicles, but we just don't build that many of them. Like, the crawler robots, yes, but we're not really going to use a bunch of those. We're going to use the normal robots. So, and transport drones, but not really. When you look at that stuff, it doesn't really go into very much. So 1 per second ought to be just fine here. We need lots of gears and a steel chopper. Let's get this out of the way so we can build using our nanobots for a little bit. I'm pretty pleased with the size of that. It kind of matches the other one. It didn't get too huge. But let's worry about the coils last, because there's not much to it. It looks like we got a little bit of water right here. I'm not sure if I have any landfill on hand. It doesn't look like it. That might get in the way. Well, looks like some stone is on hand. So we can get rid of that. And we now have concrete here. We just have to be careful to only pick up what we need, and it's going to take a very long time to fill up our inventory, so let's not bother. Because they stack in 1,000. But let's just do that. And even though I updated the mods, stuff still explodes when you lay the concrete down, so shrug on that. Oh man, I need more power lines. I am very much looking forward to the day when all of this stuff is automated and I don't have to keep handcrafting these power lines. So there's really not much going on here. Just the multi-cylinder engines with their inputs of motors and gears, and then the steel, which needs to get chopped up. And that can be done by a single machine, so we should probably set this up in such a way that one machine can handle it all. So the output will be there, and we might as well double this up on both sides. So let's take care of that now. And I imagine that with these rates, that yellow inserters will be plenty. And let's copy it one more time because of nears and fars. So that gives us 12. It seems like in that sense, we can just extend this down and get 24. And it's still kind of small. Well, let's see what we can do with one steel chopper. Okay, well, as it turns out, we double this up, we'll get exactly that. And it puts out a few more engines than we need, but really the input requirements are pretty low for this. And I'm thinking if we did 2 of them, that would be a little long. So we'll just put it there and let the bots fight on who gets to build it. Let's see, and at some point, we do have to make the steel. Well, I know I just said, well, let's match it up because it's exactly one machine, but putting exactly one machine in here looks a little annoying. It's just so gross no matter how you do it. I wonder, could it be placed in the middle here? And have this just jump straight through like that? So then we can have those going through there. And then one belt will have to come in here to get inserted on there. But yeah, that's better. I'm still not totally pleased with that, but where are you going to put one machine when it's a 1:48 ratio? Well, that's basically the setup. Time to put it in place. This one's a little tricky because I don't have the power line up there, but it looks like the actual machine is lined up right here. So 2 spaces gives us this. I just twitched right when I clicked on it, but I think it's good. The spacing is just right. And that should be the new connection. So everything should be good. Let's see how all this works. Let's start with the steel here. Make sure it goes where it needs to go. And of course, can't forget about productivity modules. And trim these belts here. Man, that feels so slow. That steel output. But we only need 2.8 per second, so seems alright, but I bet the production speed on these is just so slow. So there's not much to really see here. Just going to very slowly consume a great deal of resources making engines. But otherwise seems okay. I think we've got a bunch of junk in here. Kind of, yeah. From when I made too many. But we can get rid of some of our extra junk here. Just putting these on the end, and it looks like one of these belts wasn't hooked up right. Just the inserter distance was wrong. There we go. Sorry if anyone noticed that ahead of time and was getting super OCD about that belt not being set up correctly. Eventually we're going to have bots doing all of this, dumping our extra resources. But for now we gotta do it. See, this is quietly working away, but I didn't hook up one of the outputs. Yeah, and that whole time, only made a few engines, but it will eventually fill up. Okay, time for something new. Big electric motors. This is going to be a very large setup. Plus, we're going to need 250 lubricant a second. And that is not something for drones. I think we already have lubricant being sent out here, correct? Yes, but it's not an LTN train. It's probably time it get converted. Although this is a real bad spot for an LTN train to park to come in here. I mean, it could make it. It would just have to go the long way around. So this will be our first true LTN liquid train. This really isn't a good spot to put it, considering a lot of this stuff here seems like it would be LTN liquids. It's a little bit of committing to a bad idea, but let's put a depot right in here. That way it won't have to turn around. Let's get that train down here so we can use it for spacing. So it should be heading down here. It is. Let's back it in so we can make this the minimum size. Let's see if I can get it in there. Nope, wrong buttons. Let's change this to depot liquid west. We'll make a new network for this. Let's just make it lubricant for now. There we go. Probably want to drain this thing first. So in that sense, I'm just going to waste the lubricant. Put him down. Oh, this is a Mark II train. How nice. And where's this thing actually going to get fuel from? Well, I guess all these stations are fueled, so if it parks here, it will eventually get it. Actually, this one train can probably handle all of those resources, but for now, we'll just use it for the one. Eventually, a lot of this is going to get converted to a more decentralized setup, where it makes a little bit more sense rather than having random trains parked in random places, but for now, this works. Provider limit train 1. I don't even know how this, if even the stack threshold works. It probably doesn't, since these are liquids. So a fourth of this would be 50k. So let's set that as the provide threshold. Although it's a fourth of a train, not the fourth of the capacity. But actually I think that's pretty much the same. Those tanks hold 50. Well, they hold slightly less. So it's 37. So 37k. And then we do want to have a system in place here to make sure the train doesn't get overloaded. And we'll do kind of what we've been doing over here since it seems to be working. Looks a little different when it's upside down here, but I think that'll work. And then gotta send this extra wire down here. Okay. That should work. We got our lubricant on the network. And some steel in transit. It's been a while since we've been up here near the aquariums. Of course, I still managed to hit things. And again. Okay, we're close enough. Looks like it gets loaded with fuel here, too. So that's not too much an issue. What to call it? Probably by the name of the item. Lubricant. Crystal. Unload. And we got to get the input in here. Luckily, as an unload station, it's much less complicated. Let's turn it off for a second so we get all these numbers right. Liquid network. It's a requester. Limit train 1. Request threshold is the size of a train, which is 37 times 4. So 148,000, which is how much it has to be low before it'll ask for a train. Whether it gets that or not depends on whether lubricant is available. And then the output signal is lubricant, but it has to be minus, and then the full capacity, which is 200,000. Since we're full, it shouldn't make any requests. Wonder if these need to be on the same type of wire. Well, I'm looking at it, not getting any signals, but it could be because it's perfectly lined up here. Let's change this number to something else, like 190. See what happens. Do we get the signal? We do. So I think it's working. It's just it's perfectly full because they're liquids. Now there's no buffer or anything for this, which I guess we could place one here if we needed to. We do have a little bit of buffer with these tanks, but we'll have to see how that works. Let's see, we should have our station listed here. Where's this one at? Is that the loading station? I forgot to name it. Yeah. Oh well, it'll still work. We'll go back down there and rename it. But that's going to be pretty silent because nothing's happening. The real test will be with our new setup here at our new bus. But I'm going to go down there and rename that station before I forget. Lubricant load. Alright. It's called lubricant main bus unload. Okay. This is basically set up the same way because it's another lubricant station. The only thing that's different is that it's a different name, but that doesn't matter to LTN. When we flip the switch, hopefully we get a request. The waiting game's always a little awkward because you're not sure if you set it up right or not because nothing's happening. No train to transport fluids. Ah, not available. There we go. Gotta make it automatic first. That's kind of the whole point. There we go. And it's asking for 150,000. Yep, which was the train's capacity. And now those are going to fill up. I'm sure we have plenty of lubricant available. Yep. Lots of resources for that. And you barely blink. And the train gets here. But it's coming in. Unload. And it's gone. We'll have to see how this works long term. I'm kind of worried that these being connected are going to potentially cause problems where a train's sitting here trying to unload but it can't quite fit because it doesn't unload from these tanks equally. But we'll see. I don't want to do more work than is necessary. But one thing we can do is like use a 4 corners tank and have each of these go into that tank equally, and that might help spread the load a little bit. But for now, we've got our lubricant over there, so we can pipe it in when we need it. We kind of need to extend the bus in a bit. Well, for now, let's see what we can build here. Well, let's try to change the numbers to match it up with the steel coil machines. Because if we made 4 of those, that would be pretty close, but one thing we can do is just 1 coil machine to 48. That actually seems like a very similar ratio to this. Yeah, because that's exactly 48 machines to 1 steel. So something like that ought to work. It'll just need to be 4 times as big. And we've got to make sure all the inputs work and all of that, because we've got pipes and everything. But I want to try to reuse this as much as possible. Let's just grab this, put it here, and see what we can do. And this will be a little bit different. There'll be a steel machine on each side. Right here and right here. Outputting the resources down. Let's see, what would take the least amount of space? Unfortunately, anything with pipes takes up a bunch of space. It's basically gonna have to be something like this. putting the pipes on the side isn't really going to work too well with inserters. I mean, we could have like long-handed inserters and whatever, but that might actually take up more space. So for this to work, it's going to have to be 48 units deep. So it's going to be pretty crazy. But if we do it lengthwise, it's going to be really wide. Well, let's try to place it in its final location. Get an idea of what we're working with here. Those bots are so fast now. Okay. So it has to be 48 long on each side. 16, 24. Yeah, it's already getting kind of big. But do we really want to have 4 of these side by side? Having it a little longer might be a better use of space. 32. Okay, if this is correct, there should be 2 groups of 48 here. And that's what we've got. So we'd have to do another one of those. And yeah, it's a little longer than everything else, but I mean, what else was going to go right there? Okay, so we have to build 2. For now, let's let the bots do what they can. Probably should have put a little bit more space in here because we need to have room for the pipes to come through here, which would need 2 gaps. Pick it all up again. Line it up. So that's where it was. 1 and 2. Kind of looks like the spacing of all this is messed up. Because they're 2 spaces apart when they should be 1. Oh well. Pick it all up again. It can be kind of hard to see these things when they're ghosts. Let's try to do this again, but properly. There, I think that's the correct number of them. That'll make it a little bit shorter. I keep changing my mind. But bots don't care. Let's pick all that up again. We can save a ton of space by just putting the power poles right there. I don't know if that's going to be too many power poles. Let's see. Actually, if they're placed directly in the middle, it should work out fine. Actually, yeah, something like this. Of course, these lights can't go here either. We'll worry about the lights last. Because now we can really mash them in there. I'm sorry, bots. I promise this is the last time I change my mind. It might be a little more appealing if these kind of switch sides like that. So before we go nuts with this, let's make sure it actually fits. So the lubricant will come up on the side here and then go down the line. These right here are the steel machines. They'll get an input that comes from the side and then they go down. And then we need electronic boards and motors. Those are being produced elsewhere, which can come up through here. Kind of similar to how this works. And then the output will be on the side. Okay, well, let's count down again. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, and finally 48. Those bots are so fast. And we're out. Okay, looks like it worked out pretty well. Not too much bigger than that other setup. Still need some pipes, but that's okay. And that should be good to copy. And we can share the same output belt right here. And that looks good. I'll kind of, except I missed one of the outputs here. Okay, I think we got most of the resources hooked up. Let's start testing things. Let's do steel first. Pretty uneventful. But the whole setup doesn't use very much of it, so it doesn't need to be fast. Let's get these outputs set up. I think we've got enough to test here. So let's put all the resources in. Well, I guess we don't have the lubricant though, so we'll have to hook that up real quick. But that part seems to be working okay. Okay, the lubricant can come in through here. And we'll probably want a pump and a buffer tank in here to make sure there's no problems. So put the tank there, we'll worry about the pump last. Well, actually it might be better to cross over the tracks here just in case we're going to have additional resources here. It's better to have them on this side than this side because there'll be unloading stations over here and we don't want to be competing with space for those, so it's better to go across the tracks here. There we go. I don't think we'll need a pump for the output here. It should be pretty stable. The flow rate is pretty good. 1100 or 1200 is about the max you get out of Factorio, regardless of whatever the pump speed is. That seems to be about the limit of the pipes. And more coil warnings, but hey, we're getting down there. It's moving. Okay, lubricant's filled up. There we go. Should be seeing lots of green. These motors, yes, take a long time as well. Just gonna have to wait on them. Lubricant made its way to the end. So look at that. All green. Just very slowly working, and boom, you can see the exact frequency that they got their lubricant, because now we got motors. Looking nice. It looks like I only hooked up some of these. Lots of undergrounds going through the bus here, but that's okay. There can only be a machine on the top or the bottom, so it doesn't get in the way of anything otherwise. Filling up on motors. And this looks like it's stabilized. Let's do a final check. What kind of output is this? About 7. And it is 192 machines. And that's basically what we calculated here. It's using up most of our factory's circuits to make, which is pretty much how we had it planned. And it's a reasonable size. I mean, it's certainly larger than everything else here, but not extremely. And it looks like it's well balanced with the regular motors, because here we are producing about 25, and here we are consuming only about 11. So that worked out. We can look at our nice pretty resources we have, but now we have to ask ourselves, what can we make with these motors? Certainly will involve some handcrafting until we've got the rest of the bus finished up. But the big one here is Automation 3, and interestingly it's still green science, but just requires white circuits, so we'll have to handcraft those to upgrade them, which will be a little annoying, but there's kind of no point in building a bus with the tier 2 machines when we have tier 3, even if we have to handcraft them for a little bit. Of course, it's a prime candidate for manufacturing on the bus here, now that we have all of those resources necessary to actually craft it. We certainly want to grab it. And what about tier 4? Interesting. See, that's kind of what's weird about this. Sometimes I don't quite understand the progression. But we needed motors for these tier 3s. And now, with tier 4, we can make them too. Because it still requires just white circuits. You know, steel bearings and some other stuff we'll have to make, but we can make those too. So it looks like we're going to skip straight over tier 3 into tier 4. Which is probably going to be an enormous improvement in speed. And probably modules. I bet those fit 4 modules in them, as opposed to the 2 we have now. So it's probably going to be a huge deal. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a weird tier. I question the requirement of those big motors, because that's why we hadn't made them yet. Well, I mean, we could have made the big motors, I guess. Maybe that was an oversight on my part. Because we've had lubricant for a long time. Or I don't know, maybe the mods got updated and this changed its location, but it seems kind of weird that I've just chosen not to make this. Because we could have had those tier 3 assembly machines quite a long time ago. So I'm going to say that something changed in the mods, and that's why I didn't do it. That's my excuse, I'm sticking with it. Well, Automation 4 then. Okay, what else here? We certainly can upgrade our cargo robots. Signal transmission would be nice. Power armor we can't do. Exoskeleton stuff. Well, that's less important than it would have been in the past because we have quality of life improvements which makes our character run faster. So that's not as valuable as it would have been, and it takes up a lot of space in the inventory. So we probably don't want to mess with that yet. Maybe in the future. Let's see, that appears to be it for now for the technology. Let's search the motors themselves and see what they go into. I mean, certainly robots, which is pretty much right around the corner, really. We're not that far off from making them. Power armor. Nothing much, really. A lot of things that have engines in them. But yeah, it kind of irks me that I've been putting off Assembly 3 because I imagine this setup would have been a heck of a lot smaller. Let's just check this out and see. So let's say instead of 2s we had 3s. And yep, that gives us 3 module slots instead. So look at that. So instead of 192, we would have needed less, but we could have put an extra module in there. Well, I guess it would have went back to about the same amount, but it would have required even less resources. Assembly 2 is 0.75, and then 1.25 for 3, but then 2. And pollution rate goes down. Man, that would have been fast. Oh well, what can you do? You can't obsess too much over this stuff. You just gotta make do with what you have and go from there. But yeah, everything's looking good here. So it's time to think about the next resources we're going to put on the bus. But that's going to have to wait until the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.